In today's video, I'm going to show you how to change a timing belt and a water pump on a 2014 Chevy Cruze. Same basic principles apply to most 4-cylinder engines. This particular vehicle has a bad water pump. Take a listen. I'm using a stethoscope to locate the source of this noise. But I'm gonna let you be the judge. As you can see, the noise is definitely coming from this water pump, so let's go ahead and get it replaced. This 2014 Chevrolet Cruze is equipped with a 1.8 liter engine, and I already have a timing belt and a water pump kit ready for it, so let's get to it. These are the tools I'm going to use. Special attention to Torx and external Torx sockets, because not everybody has those. I'm also going to use a floor jack and an impact gun. First, let's disconnect negative side of the battery and start draining coolant since we're replacing the water pump. Radiator drain valve is right there, but it will be easier to get to it from underneath. All we need to do is remove these two screws, and we can bend this part of the splash shield out of the way. I'm going to place a small hose on the drain valve outlet to give coolant direction of flow, so it doesn't spill everywhere. Open expansion reservoir to help coolant drain faster. The timing belt is placed behind this cover. But in order to get to it, let's start by loosening up this clamp so we can remove the air cleaner assembly. Next, disconnect mass airflow sensor. You're going to have to pull back on this red tab and then push down on this release tab. Wiggle this wiring harness clip up and it comes right out. Remove all the screws and pull the box out. Next goes the filter. Then there is this breather tube we need to disconnect. And all we have left is pull the box up from here and from right here. Next step, remove these two screws. They're external Torx E10. But regular 8mm socket works too. And there goes our upper timing cover. Next step would be to remove this bracket and the motor mount, but in order to do that, we're going to need to jack up the engine. Let's start by jacking up the right front wheel and taking it off. Next, we're going to need to move this splash shield out of the way. Mine is already missing a bunch of push pins. There are 3 screws right here. Now on this side, there is 1 more screw and 2 push pins. Two more push pins at the top of the wheel well. And those should be enough to move this cover out of the way. And now we have access to the front of the engine. Next, let's remove this bottom cover. There are just 4 screws holding it. And now we can place our floor jack underneath the engine. I'm using a block of wood to protect the oil pan from damage. You want to jack up the motor slightly to take that weight off the motor mount. Next, I'm going to loosen these 3 bolts about halfway. They are the connecting piece between the engine mount and the engine. Next, I'm going to adjust the engine height to relieve them of any tension. This ensures I don't damage any threads. When the engine is at the right height, the bolts will come out by hand. Now our engine mount is separated from the engine, and the next thing we're going to do is remove the mount from the vehicle. With the engine mount out of the way, you can raise or lower your engine to gain better access to different parts of it. Next piece to remove would be this engine mount bracket, but part of it sits behind the drive belt, so let's remove that first. This can also be a good time to loosen your water pump pulley bolts while the belt is still on. Removing the belt is easier to do from underneath. You're going to need a 19mm socket, 12 point. Fit it right here and turn it counterclockwise. While we're at it, let's remove the drive belt tensioner as well. It is just one bolt and the tensioner comes right out. Crankshaft pulley bolt is E18. But before I remove it, I'm going to turn the crankshaft pulley to top dead center. Timing marks on the camshaft sprockets should point toward each other, like this. If they are pointing away from each other, you're going to need to turn your crankshaft one more revolution. Since I don't have a camshaft locking alignment tool, I'm just going to mark where the sprockets are in relation to the timing cover, so that I can put them in the exact same place when I install the new timing belt. Next, I'm going to raise the engine slightly to gain better access to the engine mount bracket. It is held by three 15mm bolts right here. Now, instead of popping out this middle cover, I'm going to save it for last because these two stops coming up from the bottom cover are in the way. So remove the bottom cover first. There are two bolts right here. And if we get underneath, there are two more bolts right here. First, remove the crankshaft pulley bolt. And the pulley itself. Now I'm going to put the crankshaft pulley bolt back in. I'm using old axle nut as an extra spacer. The reason I want the bolt back in is so that I can turn the crankshaft over if I need to. Next, I'm going to remove two timing cover bolts on the sides. And the timing cover comes right out. All I have left now is to pop this middle piece out. This piece just snaps on with two clips or tabs, one on the left and one on the right. Now with a 6mm Allen wrench, we're going to turn our tensioner clockwise to take the tension off the belt. Pay attention to this small black hole right there. That's where you can fit the locking pin so that the tensioner stays in collapsed position. And now we can remove the timing belt. Now it's hanging up right here a little bit. So I'm going to turn the cam clockwise just a hair to release it. And the belt is out. Next, remove the timing belt tensioner and the idler pulley. Now I'm also going to change the water pump. As I mentioned earlier, loosening these pulley bolts is easier with the drive belt still on. You can also use a screwdriver to try to hold it in place. But I have a chain wrench, which makes this significantly easier. With the pulley out of the way, all we have left is 5 screws to remove. Clean the mating surface with some metal brush or a scraping tool. Make sure the impellers are pointing in the same direction. Install a new gasket. And put the new pump in. Torque water pump bolts in a crisscross pattern to 71 inch-pounds. Install water pump pulley and pulley bolts. Torque them to 15 foot-pounds. And now back to our timing belt. New idler pulley comes with a new bolt. I like to put a little bit of Loctite on the threads just for extra precaution. According to the manufacturer, proper torquing procedure consists of 3 steps. First, torque it to 15 foot-pounds, then turn it another 120 degrees, and then turn it an extra 15 more degrees, which brings our torque to about 20 foot-pounds. Same process applies for the timing belt tensioner. Align this pin that is sticking out with this groove. And use the same 3-step torquing procedure. Now I'm going to start installing the timing belt by first putting it on the crankshaft sprocket, then go around the idler pulley. And before I can start putting it on the cam sprocket, I need to turn the cam to put it back in position. Once the teeth on the sprocket align with the teeth on the timing belt, I'm going to proceed to the next cam. You want to make it as snug as possible. Now there are 2 things I want to bring to your attention here. First, the exhaust cam is a little bit off mark right now, and the belt feels loose in between the 2 cams. So I'm going to turn the intake cam counterclockwise. That will make it off mark in the same direction as the exhaust cam. That way there is no more slack in between the 2 cams, and there is more slack on the tensioner side, which is exactly what we want. Next, we're going to turn our tensioner clockwise and fit the timing belt over it. Let's make a quick recap. We start by installing the belt on the crankshaft pulley and work our way in the direction in which the tensioner will be the last point, because it will pick up all the slack. This is the only place that can have slack during installation. So this is tight, this is tight, this is tight, and this is the slack the tensioner will pick up. Now regarding our cams being off mark, I wasn't too worried about it because the crankshaft is a little bit off mark too, in the same counterclockwise direction. So if I turn the crankshaft just a little bit, all the marks will be dead on. Now a quick tip, if at the end of it you still feel you're a little bit off, always ask yourself, which one of the teeth is closer to the mark? If one of your sprockets is off by a tooth or more, take the timing belt off and realign everything. Now all I have left to do is to turn the crankshaft over 2 revolutions and make sure that everything is still in time. And it is, so I can start putting everything back together. Snap this cover on. Install the bottom cover 53 inch-pounds is the torque on these bolts. According to the manufacturer, you're supposed to discard the old bolt and use a new one. Don't forget the washer. There goes our crankshaft pulley. I'm just going to tighten the bolt with the impact gun. Technically, you're supposed to use a special tool to hold the crankshaft in place and torque it in 3 steps. Next, install the drive belt tensioner and torque it to 41 foot-pounds. Install the engine mount bracket and torque the bolts in 2 steps. Put the drive belt back on. Next goes the engine mount. You may have to bring the engine up or down to align it with the mount. Get everything installed loosely. You may have to wiggle your engine too. Now final height adjustment to make sure everything can move freely and go in by hand so that we don't damage any threads. Torque these 3 in a 2-step sequence, and these 3 get torqued to 46 foot-pounds. Now we can remove our jack, put back the wheel well cover, take my rubber hose, close the drain valve, clean everything up, put all the covers, push pins, and screws back in place. Install the wheel and torque it to 100 foot-pounds. Put the upper timing cover on, torque the bolts to 53 inch-pounds. Install the air cleaner assembly. Don't forget the breather tube, air filter, and the top cover. Wiring harness, mass airflow sensor connector. Tighten up the clamp and the screws. Reconnect the negative battery cable. Fill up your cooling system. And let's take a listen to this engine now. As you can see, the engine is running great, everything is in time, the water pump doesn't make any noises, and all I have left is to test drive it and make sure nothing is leaking. Timing belt kits usually come with a sticker to fill out the mileage when the timing belt was done, when the next replacement is due, and what the date of replacement is. Put it in a conspicuous place so that anybody who works on your car would know that the timing belt has been replaced. Now some of you are probably wondering about the timing alignment kit they make for this engine. Having it can definitely be helpful if you've never replaced a timing belt before. Plus, it'll hold your crankshaft in place so you can loosen and tighten your crankshaft pulley bolt without having an impact gun. I hope this video was helpful and now you know a thing or two about how to change a timing belt and a water pump on a regular 4-cylinder engine. Share your experience and feedback in the comments below. Thank you for watching, good luck and take care.